Hello, so we are back to Unit 1, Part B, and this has to do with how life has been organized on our planet. And again, I'm trying to do this from a point of view of going back in time and going towards today. So back in 1707 and 1778, we had Linnaeus, and he organized life according to similar structures and characteristics. He designed a system using a two-part naming system with genus species. For example, humans are Homo sapiens. Now, do you notice the word Homo? That is our genus. It is uppercase, and sapiens is lowercase. And generally, we talk about them being italicized and all this other specific way of writing it. But more importantly, what is the reasoning behind it? Well, it would be a problem, and it was a problem back in the day when people were having a discussion over two organisms thinking they were talking about the same thing, and they were not. They were talking about two totally different organisms. I mean, we all know what that's like when you have a conversation with somebody and you've suddenly realized you're talking apples and they're talking oranges. So it's really important that we know that we are talking about the same thing. So Linnaeus came up with this specific type of naming system. We then have broken it down into what was called the kingdoms. So when I was in school, there were only 5 kingdoms. Okay, so when we talk about the kingdoms, we have, let's see if my pen will work, and it's not going to work today. We have 5 kingdoms. In fact, when we talk about those 5 kingdoms, it was kingdom Plantae, Animalia, Fungi, Protista, Eubacteria, and Archaebacteria were one kingdom called Kingdom Monera. All right. Since then, DNA studies have revealed that those bacteria they were all protista, single cell organisms, we'll talk about that a little later, were very different. And so we had to break them into 2 separate kingdoms. So that would be Kingdom Eubacteria and Archaebacteria. So if you ever hear Kingdom Moneran or the Monerans, they're just referring to all bacteria. There are, let me go back. There is a problem with Kingdom Protista. And with Kingdom Protista, I don't know why it's not letting me annotate. Kingdom Protista is kind of a junk drawer. There were a lot of organisms that didn't quite fit into the plant, animal, fungi kingdom or bacteria. And so we threw things that we didn't know where they fit into Kingdom Protista. Since then, with DNA technology, we are able to compare DNA and we are able to unpack Protista. And that's a totally different type of classification system. In the meantime, though, we were able to say, well, let's just back up and not classify things so with so much detail. So let's make it more broad. So we have the domain system, and with the domain system, we have 3 domains. We have bacteria and archaean, and those are organisms that we call prokaryotic cells. Like I said, bacteria and archaeans are really different. So we have them in 2 different domains. And then all the other life on our planet are eukaryotic cells. So we call them domain eukaryota. Okay. And then we can compare the 2 side by side. So we can see where the bacteria in the domain system is eubacteria and the kingdom system. Archaea is archaebacteria, and then eukarya can be unpacked into 4 different groups: Protista, Plantae, Fungi, and Animalia. Like I said, but there is a whole nother more, I don't say sophisticated, but there's a new system using what we call clades that kind of put this into more detailed areas where we haven't completely accepted that whole nomenclature system or organization system yet, but it is on its way of, it's becoming more and more well-known. So my question for you would be, well, where would you put these organisms? Okay. Like if you saw coral, would you put them in with plants? Would you put them in with animals? Where would you put them? A Venus flytrap. Venus flytrap, I mean, I think that we all call them plants, right? But they eat other organisms. They eat insects. Plants are autotrophs. They don't eat other organisms. So where would you put that organism? And then we have Volvox, which is a really cool looking organism. And those are different colonies that are growing inside of it. So there's some organisms, if you were to look at them and just by looking at them, you would be like, I don't know where to put them. And corals don't move. They do photosynthesize. So there are some, organisms that it's just not quite clear where to put them. And so we have to investigate further. And then I like to go into some of the history of significant scientific observations because it will kind of give you the scope of sequence of how things have been discovered in the biological realm. So in 1590 is the beginning of microscopes. That's when we first started to use lenses to see things that were too small to see with our eyes. In 1665, it was significant because we had the observation of a cell. We use cork cells, and they look like cells or like dorm rooms, which monks lived in, which were called cells. We wouldn't call them now. You don't call your dorm room cells. We call prison cells, but that is where that word originated from. And then in 1676, we started seeing microorganisms. We had a man named Van Leeuwenhoek, and he looked at pond water and found all kinds of creepy crawlies that we couldn't see with our eyes in that water. There's Carl Linnaeus with our classifying life. A lot of people, because we couldn't see a lot of the beginnings, like little eggs of flies and stuff, people believed in what was called spontaneous generation, meaning like if you were to leave a piece of meat out, you would spontaneously generate flies. Another one was if you took a handkerchief and you put grains of wheat or corn or anything inside of it in the corner of a barn, you would spontaneously generate mice. I mean, this is what people thought. And we were able to disprove that theory by, again, putting that meat in a closed container and showing, nope, they didn't spontaneously generate. So 1768 was when we realized that cells come from other cells, basically, and which led to the cell theory, and that life doesn't just magically appear. All right. The cells theory does say that all living organisms are made up of cells. All cells come from pre-existing cells, and the cell is the fundamental unit of life. And then we have Darwin with the theory of evolution by natural selection. The amazing thing with this was that Darwin was able to come up with this theory along with Wallace. We'll talk about Wallace a little later. Before we even knew about genetics, before we knew about chromosomes and mitosis and meiosis and some of the basic science concepts that we take for granted today, they were not discovered until after Darwin came up with his theory of natural selection. And then, of course, in 1953 with Watson and Crick's discovery of the structure of DNA. So it just kind of puts things in perspective of the timeline in which we came up with this theory of evolution before we even knew all these little details that are necessary to fully understand how life became so diverse on our planet. So what's next? Again, watch your video, read your textbook section, and complete the assignment. Don't forget to submit it. All right. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.